All right, let's talk about something that for a lot of us can be either a source of major dread or a really powerful engine for growth. I'm talking about the 360-degree evaluation. Today, we're going to break down how you can turn this whole process from a task you just want to get over with into a genuine breakthrough for you and your team.
But first, let me ask you something. Just think back to the last performance review you were a part of. I mean, was it, actually useful? Did it spark any real change? Or did it kind of feel like you were just going through the motions, ticking off boxes? The reality is, a lot of feedback systems out there are just broken. But they really don't have to be.
So, here's the journey we're going to take together. First, we'll lay the blueprint by crafting some really effective questions. Then, we'll get into the build phase, gathering and making sense of the feedback. After that, the breakthrough, turning it all into a solid action plan. And finally, we'll do a quick reality check on the common hurdles you're likely to face. Okay, let's start right at the beginning with the questions. You have to think of this as the absolute foundation of the whole process. I mean, if you get this part wrong, the entire structure is just going to be wobbly. The quality of feedback you get is 100% tied to the quality of the questions you ask.
So, what makes a good question? It really just boils down to 4 key things. First up, clarity. Is it simple and easy to get? No confusing jargon. Then, relevance. Does it actually have to do with their job? Next, and this is a big one, specificity. You're fishing for details here, not just vague feelings. And finally, neutrality. The question can't be set up to push for the answer you want to hear.
Let's look at an example of why specificity is so powerful. Ask a vague question like, does the individual handle work well? And what do you get? A yes or a no. Not very helpful, right? But if you ask the specific version, how do they manage their workload when things get stressful? Well, now you're going to get a story, an example, something you can actually talk about and work with. Here's another classic trap, biased questions. The first one, how well does the individual excel? It already assumes they're excelling. It's baked right in. A neutral question, though, like asking for a concrete example of leadership, well, that opens the door for a much more honest, evidence-based answer, good or bad. And finally, we got to talk about leading questions. Don't you think is basically just asking someone to agree with you. It puts them in a corner. The much better way to go is an open, neutral question like, how has their performance changed? This invites real thought, not just a rubber stamp on your opinion. Okay, so you've crafted some really great questions. Now it's time to move on to the next phase, the build. This is where we gather up all that valuable feedback and start the super important work of turning a bunch of raw data into some actual, meaningful insights. But hold on, before we analyze a single comment, we have to talk about the absolute bedrock of this entire system, anonymity and confidentiality. Look, if people don't fully trust that what they say is private, they just won't be honest, period. Without that guarantee, your data is pretty much useless and the whole thing falls apart.
Once you have that trust, you can dive into the analysis. And there's a pretty clear 5-step process here. First, you pull all the information together. Then, you start looking for anomalies, any outliers that seem a little weird and might tell a deeper story. From there, you identify the recurring shortfalls, but just as importantly, you pinpoint the strengths. The last step is to pull it all together into a real action plan.
Now, a really key idea in this analysis phase is something called triangulation. It sounds technical, but it's actually simple. It just means you're getting the full picture by comparing feedback from all different angles, from their peers, their manager, and their direct reports. This is so crucial because it stops one person's single opinion from skewing the whole result and gives you a much fairer, more complete picture. And now we get to what is honestly the most important part of this whole thing, creating the action plan. This is the payoff. This is where all that careful work of gathering and analyzing feedback actually transforms into a real, tangible plan for growth. I absolutely love this quote from the source material. The goal is to convert raw feedback into actionable intelligence. Because that's the whole point, right? This isn't just an exercise in collecting opinions. It's about creating a roadmap, a guide that tells someone exactly what they can do to improve. So, what does a strong action plan even look like? Well, it's got to have a few key pieces. It needs to clearly spell out the areas for improvement, suggest some specific training or activities, and set measurable goals. It should also have timelines for checking back in. And hey, it's just as important to recognize and affirm their strengths. What are they already great at, and how can they do more of it? It's all about moving forward. All right, time for a little reality check. because in a perfect world, this process would be completely smooth. But, we don't live in a perfect world. So let's talk about the common hurdles that you will almost certainly run into and how you can get ready for them.
The first big challenge is just feedback overload. It's so easy to drown someone in so much data and so many comments that they just get overwhelmed and totally shut down. The key here is for you to act as a filter. You have to distill all that noise down to 2 or 3 of the most critical, actionable things for them to focus on.
The next one's a classic: poor communication. You often see someone who is an absolute genius in the technical parts of their job, but really struggles with the people skills needed for real teamwork. The answer here isn't just to hope it gets better on its own. It's to provide specific, targeted coaching or training to help them communicate more effectively.
And next up, resistance to change. Look, in the fast-paced world we live in, an inability to adapt can slow down not just one person, but the entire organization. To get past this, you have to frame change not as a threat, but by showing them the what's in it for me, the clear, direct benefits of adapting. Another hurdle you'll see a lot is a lack of personal accountability. When someone on the team doesn't take ownership of their actions, it just erodes trust across the board. The fix has to be proactive. Set crystal clear expectations up front and then consistently follow through. Make sure everyone knows their role in the team's success.
And finally, there's the issue of not meeting performance benchmarks. A missed KPI is often just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue, whether it's a skill gap, a motivation problem, or a flaw in the process, is usually hiding just below the surface. You've got to use the feedback process to figure out what that root cause actually is.
And that's exactly why navigating all these challenges is so critical. As the source material puts it, the ultimate goal here is to maintain fairness, objectivity, and integrity. This whole process is about building people up, and that can only happen if everyone involved trusts that it's a just and consistent system.
So I'll leave you with this final question to think about. Feedback is just a tool, and like any tool, it can be used to build great things, careers, teams, a positive culture, or if it's used poorly, it can be used to break them. So how is your organization wielding that tool?